All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Seem to have already started the technical difficulties. Well, they're back. It's fine. Just gonna say right now, apparently the recording part of the video didn't go as planned. It decided to start halfway of that timer, but it's fine. We'll just still send the episode on to be uploaded from this point on. At least that still works. So it will just start at like 9 seconds instead of the very beginning with the music. It's fine. Everything's fine. How are you? Anyway, so welcome everybody to the Airlock Podcast, episode 18, where we're gonna have some slight changes to how I'm running some of these windows. I now have moderators, at least for right now. I still would like to get a better team to cover a range of days, because not every week or not every day can be covered by only a couple people. It's fine. I'll take what I can get right now. So that's a few less screens I have to worry about, and I don't have a bot that's going to be screaming at me anymore. Well, it will still be on. It won't be screaming at me anymore. It'll just let the mods know. But yeah, we now have moderators that are watching the live chat on my Twitch channel, who will be keeping a close eye like a hawk, making sure everything stays civil. But anyway, welcome everybody. Bit of news, not really actually. The only real thing I have here of note is the Tempest tailoring tool had an update that apparently fixed a lot of issues that pilots have been noticing. That is being taken care of, and we'll actually probably even get to talk about that earlier with our guest tonight. Actually, no, another bit of big news. It has now been announced fully to the greater TIE Corps. At this time, we have Eagle's squadron commander, who has opted to begin his step down from the position. Nothing egregious, nothing bad or anything, just real life is taking up more of his time than he had expected, and cannot fully run as the squad's commander. But to Commander Drummer, the Gunner Nate of Eagle Squadron, we thank you for your service, sir, and we hope everything is going fine. The position for Squadron Commander for Eagle is now open in terms of applications. If you are interested, please make sure you apply to the appropriate personnel, i.e. Admiral Silwar. There is an announcement in the Discord server. If you just go on there and just take a look at it, you'll be able to see all the information there. So at this time, we currently have Captain Sir Caleb, who will be acting as the temporary de facto squadron commander until a new one is chosen. Good luck to you there. That's pretty much all the big ones that I have right now. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and unmute and undeafen myself for Turtle to hear me. And everybody, please welcome our guest star this evening, Fleet Admiral Turtle Jerrar. I hope I pronounced that last name correctly. I should have asked you that.
Sure, yeah, that sounds good. Hey, good evening.
Okay, evening. So, this has been... apparently this was another one where folks have been waiting for. No one told me. So, it's like, okay, cool. Great to have you on the show. Wish people would have told me sooner.
It's absolutely, it's good to be here, and glad to be able to get on here and kind of chat about what the internet office is doing and kind of neat projects we have going on. It'll be a good time.
I was gonna say one of the most important offices. In fact, I want to be as bold to say the most important office in the entire TIE Corps at this time. So I guess we'll go straight into it. How do we start with your journey from the very beginning?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely one of those members that's been around for too many years, I guess, at this point. No, so I actually came into the Emperor's Hammer way back in 1997.
Oh wow.
I think I had tracked my join date down to, I think it was January of 97. And, started pretty much as everybody back during that time period. I had, played TIE Fighter and loved TIE Fighter, loved the, getting to play as the bad guys after, having originally played the X-Wing game. And, just the storyline and, the nature of the game itself was, absolutely hooked me. And like many of our other members at that time, it was like, hey, what else is out there in terms of, what I can do and experience with this game. And I was also involved pretty early on the internet on IRC, Internet Relay Chat. And so the Emperor's Hammer at the time had a presence on IRC as well. And so kind of eventually those two things came together, and, I joined in, like I said, back in 97. So started out in, any Hebrew speakers forgive my pronunciation. I believe the correct pronunciation is Sade Squadron, back on Wing 5 of the Sovereign class Superstar Destroyer Sovereign, which again is one of the ships that many of our newer members might not be familiar with, but that's actually the flagship of the fleet.
I was gonna say, everybody, all of the newcomers are technically assigned on that ship, aren't they? Through the IWATs.
So what we did is we actually moved the IWATs to the Avenger.
Right, Avenger. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. So when we started the move to the unknown regions, that kind of story arc we started a year or two ago, we essentially moved IWATs there with the idea that new pilot training would be going on the Avenger. So yeah. So essentially we've left the Sovereign, back in the the Minos cluster and basically in the Aurora Prime system as part of the Home Guard, or the flagship of the Home Guard, and we're forward deployed now. But yeah, back in that day, the Emperor's Hammer, I guess I should say the TIE Corps in particular, was larger, and that we had numerous wings. The Sovereign in particular actually had 5, if I'm not mistaken, possibly 6 wings. So wings at least 1 through 5, and possibly 6 as well. My memory escapes me on that.
And how many squadrons were in each wing again?
I believe it was either 5 or 6. Again, it's one of those. I believe 6. I would have to go back and look at that.
Oh Jesus! And that was a lot of wings and a lot of squadrons.
A lot of wings, a lot of squadrons, and we'll get to this later when I talk about some of the website and historical stuff. But you can actually still find all those historical units on the website, which is something I'm definitely interested in preserving. So, but yeah. So Sade Squadron on Wing 5. That was where I really started out as a member. I think when I was looking at your list of potential questions and topics to discuss, it was the journey from sub-lieutenant to fleet admiral.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of interesting because I never came in as a sub-lieutenant. So back then, the initial ranks in the Emperor's Hammer were built as a logical extension from the ranks in the original TIE Fighter game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so you would submit your TIE Fighter pilot file, which was actually one of the qualifying factors of membership. And among having had to have completed a certain number of the original missions and training missions and things of that nature, your actual initial rank was based on the rank you had achieved in the game. So I actually came in as a brigadier general in the odd ranking system that existed in TIE Fighter.
Okay.
And held that rank for a period of time until we converted to the system that we use today. And I think at that time of conversion, I think I was converted to a captain or something based on whatever conversion criteria we had used back then. So that was my first technically rank of the the newer system that we use, essentially leading on up to today. So I was in Sade Squadron for a period of time. Eventually became the commander of that squadron. That was my first squadron command, which was great fun. Enjoyed it. Actually, not that long ago, when I was dredging through archives, found the website from the squadron from the time period that I was the commander. So if anybody's really curious about that, I can dump it somewhere for people to see what squadron websites look like in the late 90s.
Yeah, I'm sure they're gonna want all that dumped in the asteroid bar somewhere where they can easily access it. That I'll leave that up to you.
Yeah, it was
However you wanna do
actually
that.
it was a good trip down memory lane, and found my old uniform image on the old system, so that was kind of fun. So I was on Wing 5 for a while. I was in Noon Squadron for a period of time, also on Wing 5. Eventually was selected to go to Praetorian Squadron, which was a joint intelligence division and TIE Corps squadron. It was kind of, I guess you could say, chaptered between the two different groups.
Mm-hmm.
And flew with Praetorian for a period of time. That was, a lot of great fun. At the time, Praetorian was very heavily focused on single player, battle mission compendium completion. That was kind of in the early days of all the multiplayer stuff with XVT and X-Wing Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
I think when I was in, I don't know that X-Wing Alliance was out yet. Might have been. I think it came later. And then,
yeah, it did.
yeah. So, and kind of finishing that time period out, I guess, if you will, as a line pilot, I applied for the position of, ironically enough, internet officer at the, I guess, early 2000s. I'd have to go back and look at my historical record, and actually was appointed to that position. So this is actually my kind of first iteration as the internet officer. And in the time period since I held the position originally and now, have kind of worked in around that office for a number of years. I was the IO proper for a while before I stepped back. Came back on board as an internet office assistant as a primary duty assignment, and did a lot of projects doing IO stuff in the early and kind of mid 2000s.
I was about to ask. It's like, don't tell me that's like since you became the IO, you've always been the IO, but it seems you've been in and out. Constantly.
Yeah. So really, that kind of takes us up to around 2006 or 2005, really 2006. Really end of 2004. Technically, I'm in the United States Army, and that was my first combat deployment.
I was still in high school.
There you go. Yeah, I was shortly out of high school, so I'm not too far. I'm not too far in front of you. So yeah, I had to take a step back from the Emperor's Hammer, obviously, to go overseas, deploy overseas.
Of course.
Came back for a short period of time. I know that you and some of your other guests have discussed astatine on the show previously, so
yeah. Yeah.
I hate to even say that name, but to make things succinct, we did not see eye to eye on many issues, and kind of in 2006, he basically shadow banned me. We've got a kind of a judicial procedure that we follow and followed back then as well, which he just kind of ignored and clicked a ban, and I said, okay, have a nice day. So that kind of was the beginning of, if you will, my long hiatus from the Emperor's Hammer. As all of the craziness happened with the club back in the 2008, 2009 time
The Dark
frame.
Ages. I want to officially call those the Dark Ages.
It was unfortunate. I'm actually dealing with some of the fallout of that even today, which I'm sure we'll kind of segue into here in a little bit. So I would kind of pop my head up every now and again, just enough to be like, hey, I exist. I've got reassigned as a reservist and made sure that, my medal record and historical record and just all that kind of stuff, my profile stuff, was kind of maintained. And every now and again, I'd poke my head up just a little bit, see what the club was doing. And kind of takes us to 2020, when we sort of had a lot of members starting, it sounded like, to do something really similar. All of a sudden had some extra time on their hands, and I was just kind of doing one of my little checks, like, hey, I haven't looked at the Emperor's Hammer in a couple of years. Like, are they alive and kicking? I loaded up the main website, and didn't seem to be a whole lot going on there. There wasn't any news postings. Back in my day, the message boards was the place, the kind of the center of all communication activity. Whatever was going on was being discussed on the message boards, and I loaded the message boards. And a couple of posts from like a couple of years ago, and kind of at first glance, I was like, yeah, the organization's dead. There's nothing going on here anymore. They're just kind of existing. Luckily, And I'll be totally honest with you, I don't remember how I came across this, but I realized there was a Telegram channel or whatever the proper term would be for on Telegram. Hopped on there.
Telegram, the app.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, the
okay.
message app.
Okay, yeah. I was like, Telegram. What is that? Oh, okay. All right.
So
Yeah.
so hopped on there and quickly found the Discord server after that, and all of a sudden I saw there's actually like a lot going on here. There's
been
a lot
life.
of new activity. And this was Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying there has been life. You just didn't know you weren't looking in the right area, I'm guessing.
Exactly, and that kind of leads to my point. Eventually I found the TC site, which is where everything was actually going on, but that wasn't really obviously linked from the main Emperor's Hammer homepage.
Mm-hmm.
And as I kind of started peeling back the layers, I realized like there's actually a lot going on here. This is not a dead organization. It's actually on the upswing, but what we're presenting to the world, if you didn't know better and if you didn't happen to stumble across the Discord link like I did, you wouldn't know that. I could have just as easily kind of popped up and said, oh yep, nothing's going on here, and never came back. I mean, and so that was kind of, I guess, leads to today, which I started getting involved a little bit on Discord as a reservist, and kind of sent Rapier a message not too long after I'd been back and kind of introduced myself. We had served in command positions at different times that sort of overlapped but never had really interfaced with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, hey, this is just some of the stuff I'm noticing. If I can be of help, I would be interested in doing that. It just kind of improve the state of the Emperor's Hammer as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And and here we are 2 and some odd years later, and serving the position I'm in now, and having done a bunch of work to kind of update our technology, if you will, and our web presence, and that's an ongoing effort. But yeah, that kind of gets us, I think, kind of to where we are today.
Well, yeah, wow, what a journey. From the very beginning to surviving the dark ages of that guy, which will not be named anymore, and to today. That's wow, just wow. So, I guess has that issue been fixed of terms of finding us? I guess it has, because we now have members actively advertising us in other places. But for those that have been in the group before, and I guess their primary what was their primary way of learning about the group, like you had at the times, like didn't see anything happening there, thought the organization's dead. Like, has that been fixed or adjusted or what?
I think that's probably an ongoing effort, right? So one of the very first things I did was basically dump something on the emperorshammer.org site, which is still there at the top of the screen, which basically says, the only thing going on this website is Dark Brotherhood. For kind of other club activity, TIE Corps in particular,
Mm-hmm.
head over to the tc.emperorshammer.org site. So, in terms of some of the stuff that we're presenting, that's a continual process, and I'm sure we'll talk about the website a little bit more. And one of the things I set out with when I came on board as the internet officer was kind of trying to have a plan. So we actually have some policy steering guidance within the internet office that are basically what we call lines of effort. So I'm basically looking along 3 or 4 different primary lines of effort, and the different things that we are doing, the different projects, the website, TTT, and others generally attached somewhere to those lines of effort. And if I was better, I would have pulled all this up so I had it in front of me. But basically, one of the big concepts of that, of one of them, is essentially presenting a unified, coherent presence with all of our materials that we present to the outside world.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I say, that's an ongoing process. The website transition is part of that. The work that Hijacker is doing with regard to the wiki is part of that. The work that we're doing to, turn off or deprecate or, update, as it may be, various policy documents, or all of the problems that we had with the Imperial University courses. All of that is kind of in that same realm of this is stuff that we present to the outside world. This is stuff we want to present to our members. It needs to be cleaned up, polished, refined, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And being, the nature of our organization that we've been around for so long, there's just a lot of stuff to go through. So it's it's taken some time.
So it's a process. It's a long process, but it will eventually get resolved, whatever the situation is.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. And then the other, I think, half of that equation is efforts that I'm not directly necessarily involved in. It's a lot of things like, for example, the reconnaissance office are doing, in terms of engagement across social media, in terms of engagement across, Reddit, Black Ranger, for example, some of the posts and things that he's working on,
Right.
cultivating connections with large, Star Wars YouTubers, if you will. A lot of those other efforts that other members are doing as well to kind of promote the organization, other Discord servers. And then that all kind of comes together when they can look at our website and say, okay, what is this organization? Oh, this is really neat. I can make a pilot and I can have awards and ranks and be assigned to a squadron. Oh, and this squadron itself has a history. That's super cool. And so that's kind of what I see, my office as supporting and enabling is everything that is going on club-wide. That's kind of our job, if you will. My job and my office's job is to basically be an enabler for those functions.
Okay. So, I guess we can start off because I know there's a few people who've been submitting questions for you, as you've also posted in the Discord server, the Ask the IO, which I've also added. Apparently now Discord has a forum function.
They do, yeah.
I've also added a section where people could just randomly add questions on there.
This will get interesting, I'm sure.
Yeah, addendum to those watching the episode either on YouTube or live right now on Twitch. If you expect me to ask those questions live, not happening. I gotta vet through these questions and I gotta make sure if the interviewees are also okay with them. So send them out for future episodes. Just don't expect them to be asked live.
I have to poke my head in there too and see what folks are dumping in there. There may be some interesting ones.
The only one so far is Marenta, which I believe she posted the gift of, I forgot what movie that was from, but it's like, what would you say you do here exactly?
Oh, look. See, I've already answered that question
exactly.
for her,
so. It's like, I planned this already, so there you go, Marenta. So, I guess we could start off, and I'm gonna have to ask this because this was the very first thing I saw the moment you posted the announcement about Ask the IO anything. Who is your favorite COOA, Combat Operations Officer Assistant, and why is it Travis?
And why is it Travis? That's not a leading question.
Yeah, I wonder who asked that question.
It's not trying to talk me on to a specific answer that it's looking for. Interesting. Yeah. I've got a really good answer for that actually.
Oh, okay.
Travis has been super instrumental as we were launching the new website, with a lot of the really early troubleshooting. He did a lot of the early testing on, especially the match processing features, which is kind of a somewhat complicated system. There's a few aspects that go into it, and we put a lot of new logic in there when we launched the new website to basically make things easier to review for the COA staff. And so I appreciate all his feedback, bug reports, suggestions for improvements. That was all absolutely a big help when we were launching the new website. So I will not admit to him being my favorite, but he ranked up there. Is that a fair political answer?
Yeah, I believe that's a fair political answer. Yes.
I'll say too. We also early on, as Squadrons launched, it was good flying with him and a bunch of the other crew on the very very early days of Squadrons. So that was good times.
Yeah, and I'm still remembering when I was running my my time trials. I remember your exact words were, "Oh, I need to relearn or remap this flight stick. I don't know if I'm gonna be that good." Gets third place immediately.
I promise you, I had not launched Squadrons at least in like 8 months at that point.
Okay. I just
And
I just
I guess
remembered
did
that.
well. I don't know.
Yeah, I
I've
was
got
just
a build I like.
yeah, I just remembered that. It was like, okay. Press X to doubt immediately. But hey, no, it's fine. I just thought it was like the funniest moment in when I played Star Wars Squadrons, whether it's a competition or not.
You know, it was actually really interesting. So when I was, and this goes to a bigger thing of, I really tend to focus on one game and I'll play it a lot, and then through no particular conscious decision, but I just won't come back to it for sometimes ever again. So kind of what happened with Squadrons, I was playing it, as soon as it came out. So I was involved really early on in the 5-man's power hour matches and stuff like that. So back then we were focusing like nearly exclusively on dogfights. All the groups, all the 5-man stacks that we were flying Emperor's Hammer, dogfight. So, I got, halfway competent at, taking out enemy starfighters relatively quickly. The transition to all of the fleet battles work kind of happened as I kind of had stepped back a little bit. Again, not really intentionally, but I just was really kind of devoting my spare time in the evenings to let's get this dang website published and out the door so people can use it. And so I kind of just, subconsciously taking a step back from gaming, and it's all kind of pivoted to the fleet battles now. So I'm not very versatile in Squadrons, but, pew pew against enemy starfighters, I'm competent.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it is a learning curve, but once you get back into swing of things, it's like, oh, you are the destroyer of worlds. So
and I think that's also. No, I played one time since I did the time trial with you, but I did the time trial, the one attempt, and then I played, I don't know, a couple weeks or something like that later. I haven't touched it since then, so I need to get back into it.
well, RTF is around the corner. Don't know how
Right.
busy you're gonna be with that. I'll get to that question. We'll double back to that.
That's good.
But yeah, no, I remember it's like you just say it's like, oh, I need to relearn Star Wars Squadrons. Immediately gets third place at the time. You would have stayed there if what I call the insane monsters, aka Kebla Omega, Silwar Nilo, and Xylo Pathel, didn't somehow break the very system I thought was unbreakable.
I was going to make another attempt to try to move up my position a little bit. So I did figure out a system. I just never had a chance to get it into practice. So we'll have to see if you end up, if and when you end up running that again.
I do plan on eventually getting back into it. It's just with all the work I have to do now and the projects I've also been wanting to get back at, and then just time with real life work. I've just been. There's barely as much as free time as I thought I have, but here's hoping that in the next couple of months I actually will have that free time. It's starting to look like it, but I don't want to make any promises yet. I will bring it back though. I will bring the time trials back.
Especially get some production assistance on your podcast efforts, and I'm sure that'll make a little bit of space for you.
Already with the new moderators, I have a lot less to deal with in terms of how many screens I have. I've gone from 17 to now 14, so we're getting there.
I had a very brief informal foray into streaming when we were doing Squadrons. And I had just built a new gaming computer, and so I have 2 screens on it. Okay. And I very quickly, as soon as I started streaming, I realized that if I end up like doing this kind of for real, I want at least 2 more. I want a space shuttle command center surrounding me.
Yeah.
I need full control of everything that's going on.
Yeah. It's like once the spiral gets into someone's psyche, it never stops.
Yeah, really.
All right, so next question here is actually a pretty good one because you've had several. What do you think is your biggest success as the internet officer?
Obviously, we've got to point to all the work overhauling the website that we've done.
Of course.
And so to kind of speak to that a little bit and just give everybody that's not already familiar just a really quick synopsis of what, quote unquote, the plan is. We early on we developed kind of a phased release schedule. So we've actually got a document that tracks all of this, and it was broken down into 5 phases, if I remember correctly. And over time, we've deviated from that a little bit, but the general idea was take the TIE Core website, do stuff to it that eventually is going to allow it to support the Emperor's Hammer as a whole, to include the Dark Brotherhood, the potential for the follow-on of the Hammer's Fist, and then eventually decommission the existing emperorshammer.org site. That's like the plan in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
So phase 1 was the first thing that we did. So we very quickly, figured out, hey, the TC site is the one we want to use as the base. What started as a refactoring of the TC site code quickly became a complete rewrite from scratch, which is why the project also took considerably longer to get the phase 1 release out the door than we had either anticipated or wanted.
Right, of course. I was gonna say, starting anything from scratch, it's gonna take that long.
Right, and it was very much, one of my very large design goals as we launched into this project is we do not want any situation where we are losing data.
Right.
In any situation, nobody's ever going to be reset back to blank. We're not going to dump old historical data. I want to keep all of that, right? Because that's our history.
Mm-hmm.
That's our history as an organization. And so even little nitpicky things like squadrons that 99% of people don't even know exist anymore, they're there. They're in the database. We've actually are still doing work to bring in all of the old squadron reports as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really important kind of steering guidance, if you will, for our efforts. So a lot of what we did in terms of dealing with the TIE Core website started all the way at the database level and fixing problems in the actual database, schemas, normalization, relationships between data. For what it was, that TC site worked really, really well for the organization for a whole bunch of years. But it also had some underlying oddities, and that was kind of what we were trying to improve was some of the way that the actual data structures were linked together to again have proper normalization, to properly have relationships, so we're not having junk, non-associated data essentially that would exist in the database. So that was kind of part of the effort. And then the other half of that was obviously all the coding to make it all into a website. So all the actual, business logic, if you will, the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what we did in phase 1. So the idea with phase 1 was take the TC website, be able to do this conversion process, and then launch it, and members can use it. And then that will be a platform for us to build on. And that's what we launched back in, I guess it was February, mid-February, something like that. When the design changed, everybody's using the new thing. That is literally a complete rewrite of the old code. I don't think any of it exists in the website at all anymore.
A fresh start.
Yeah, and so and we did it. I think everybody saw. There was no loss of data. In fact, along the way, we added data from backups and old imports and things of that nature.
Okay.
So that was kind of step 1. Phase 2, if you will, was the big piece of that was Imperial University, because Dark Brotherhood and Imperial University, largely speaking, were the two things that are running on the old or were running on the old emperorshammer.org website.
Mm-hmm.
So we got done with phase 1. Meanwhile, we're doing some kind of quality of life patches here and there, little improvements, constantly. And then I launched into officially quote unquote phase 2, and I looked at the Imperial University data in the emperorshammer.org database. I'm like, okay, this is like courses and exams and results and who's completed courses. This is going to be super easy. We'll just convert the database over. I'll slap the front end on it and link it all together, and Bob's your uncle. You'll be good to go.
Right.
Come to find out, the amount of problems that existed in just the Imperial University data was kind of nightmarish.
Oh, that doesn't sound good.
It was awful, and I'll spare everybody all the ugly details. I'd have to go back and look. It's possibly up to like 1,000 lines of SQL code that was just basically fixing the old data.
Oh no.
And so we had technical problems with the data, and we also unfortunately had a lot of problems with the actual content of the data, which kind of gets now into the training officer, realm. So
yeah, I was gonna ask because I remember the training officer asked the educational committee and the TOA and the attaché about reviewing some of the old courses, some of which were weird. Not gonna get into them specifically, but I'm gonna assume was most of those courses that were just either empty on the inside because of the coding, or that was just it was.
Well, so essentially, a lot of those courses were originally restored by Mont and I believe Havoc about 10 years ago. I don't know what they restored everything from, but there was a restoration effort to get stuff from archives after everything was exploded in the 2009 timeframe. But unfortunately, what I saw as I started going through all of that was, other than like, hey, there's some weird courses and there's some subjects that, like, why are we still instructing this technically? Other than stuff like that, there was a lot of problems with the course notes in terms of corruption caused by bad character encodings. I won't go into all the boring technical details there. A lot of stuff that just should have been turned off. A lot of things when I looked behind the scenes and I was trying to, make heads or tails of what this course was supposed to be, like the wrong course notes are associated with that particular course. The exam questions don't match. There are no answers to the exam questions.
Yeah, we've been
things like
noticing
where
that.
we're asking members to take this test, and then how was this being graded in the past? So I had a lot of frustrations dealing with that. We were trying to get the former TO to engage, and unfortunately, he just wasn't able to step up to the level that we were really needing for this, level of effort that we were trying to put into this transition. And so largely, essentially, the internet office and a big part myself kind of got bogged down in trying to deal with all of these data problems and content problems in order to make the transition to the new site at least halfway coherent. And so that was about the time too, of course, we put out the new announcement for a training office position, and so it worked out really well. We got several really qualified candidates, and we were able to bring Silas on board, and that's been a tremendous help because we were essentially able to transition all of the code, launch the new Imperial University, and then now we've got a new training officer that can actually go in and provide guidance and oversight of that, and then go and fix a lot of those kind of deeper content problems that just was not really in my purview to address.
Yeah, and I can't, as part of the education committee, I can't get into it, but I can definitely tell you, half of those courses that existed, we just looked at them and just uttered one word: why?
Right, and there was, and that's even after I having gone through and fixed a lot of things and turned things off, and so you're seeing the improved version. So there's a lot of frustrations there. So what I thought was going to be really easy data transition was not. It was awful, to be quite frank. But we got through it. We did it. So that's phase 2. Phase 3 really leads into the transition of Dark Brotherhood operations. So the idea there is we can take almost everything else that the emperorshammer.org website is doing, but that transitions all to the quote-unquote new website, the quote-unquote TICOR website, which we've always designed from the ground up as it is eventually going to support the club as a whole. And so the way that we envision that this is going to work is it's going to be the same code, it's going to be the same website that essentially powers all of the different Emperor's Hammer groups. Then what we're going to do is we will kind of theme things and tailor things according to the appropriate group, depending on, for example, which subdomain you access the website by. Okay. So maybe you go to tc.emperorshammer.org and you get a TICOR banner across the top, just like you do now. You get information on the left-hand, links that are relevant to the TICOR. once we launch the Dark Brotherhood to that, maybe you come in on db.emperorshammer.org, and now you're going to see Dark Brotherhood across the top. You maybe have different styling. We'll probably change out some of those links that are on the side because some of those are, combat rating, flight rating systems. Those are largely TC systems. They're not Dark Brotherhood systems.
Right.
So we'll tailor that experience accordingly. And then the idea there is that with just one pin, you'll have potentially multiple characters if you're involved in multiple groups. And so that's where your group-specific awards and things that are very unique, your rank, your unit of assignment, your awards, things of that nature, that'll go to your group-specific character. And then other things that are much more generic, for example, the activity record to a certain extent. When you fly a single-player mission, for example, you're just flying that as an Emperor's Hammer member.
Right.
That's not going to be a specific character credit thing. It'll just be, hey, you've completed it as a member. So that's kind of what that piece is going to look like with the rollover and integration of Dark Brotherhood operations into the quote-unquote new site.
Now, just for clarification, because I know it's still called the Dark Brotherhood, or is it what is also going to be apparently now named the Secret Order, apparently, by Camjit, or is it still going to be called Dark Brotherhood?
So what's going on there, and I won't get into too much of that effort because, number one, it's not really my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Others can speak to it much more intelligently and up to date than I can. But basically the idea here is the Dark Brotherhood is still the Dark Brotherhood, but we're looking at the next evolution of the Dark Brotherhood.
Okay.
And so the concept that's been landed on is this secret order organization. The idea there being that it's an organization and I'm trying to think of the best term. It's an organization and a line of activities, I guess would be my definition,
Mm-hmm.
that you can participate in without us having to basically create a whole new group that would have very potentially redundant command structures, administrative, requirements for people to, for example, process screenshots and
Mm-hmm.
process awards and process these other things and do squadron evaluations or the equivalent thereof. That's kind of the concept, if you will, with that secret order. So,
Okay.
as a TIE Corps pilot, it's an organization you would be able to participate in by doing a lot of things that you're already doing as a member, in addition to some additional things that we want to build into that. So that's kind of the concept there.
Okay. So that actually answered a part of the next question I had. Actually, you've actually been answering parts of all the other questions that I'm seeing here. So this is great. I guess the other. So yeah, biggest success, the new website and the evolution of what's going to be the other phases. Because I guess the other question is, what phase are we in currently now, and how many are left?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, I'm in phase 3 right now. So I've actually started prototyping essentially transitions of additional data from the old emperorshammer.org website, and basically, on my local development machine, there's people with Dark Brotherhood characters and ranks and awards and stuff like that. So I'm working that piece. I'm guarded on how easy that's going to be because I'm a little worried that I'm going to discover some similar problems I found with the Imperial University data.
Okay.
Again, there was a lot of back-end data structural issues that just caused a lot of pain, but hopefully I'm not going to experience that. So we'll see.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. So far so good. The early runs I've done have been smooth enough, so I'm starting to get that figured out. And excuse me. So a lot of that's going to be transition, not only of Dark Brotherhood, but eventually, remember I kind of mentioned my big concept of I don't want people to lose their stuff.
Right.
So if you were a member of subgroup X any number of years ago and your data was imported to the emperorshammer.org website and you've got, super secret squirrel, awesome medal, whatever, I want to preserve that for posterity, right? People earn that stuff, and it's important to a lot of people. So
hey, you can't be taking away the super secret squirrels. I mean,
Exactly, right? So that's not going to be a really early design or a really early goal of transition of all the other groups. My Dark Brotherhood data is my focus with that, but the work that I'm doing now will support that transition of all the other stuff later on. It will just be basically changing up a few little bits of code.
Okay.
So we're officially in phase 3 now. Phase, like I said, we've modified some stuff over a period of time. 4 and 5 are now a little bit blended together, and some of it's already been done. So the phasing in 4 and 5 is not so critical anymore. But basically, the gist is at the conclusion of phase 3, moving into phase 4 and on, essentially what we're doing is a complete decommission of the old emperorshammer.org website. And the new website will now sit on that domain and be the one website for the Emperor's Hammer. And that kind of brings us full circle to what I mentioned earlier about this kind of incremental improvements, improving the experience for members, improving what we're presenting out to the world. That'll kind of be the culmination, if you will, at least for our main domain website. When we decommission that old website and get it all onto the new site, where we can now have a much more modern platform, a much more maintainable platform, and this stuff can exist on for the next 27 years, 28 years, however old we are.
Yeah, exactly. So another question here: has being the internet officer become easier or more difficult over time? I think I know where this answer is actually going to go.
I'm glad you do, because I don't.
Oh, okay, never mind. All right, throw that wrench in there.
I would say it's just different, and it's evolved over time.
Okay.
So in the past, the internet officer's scope had been, I guess, a little more limited, and because number one, I kind of came in with some of those design goals that I told you about, which is across the enterprise, anything that we're presenting out to the world, I basically want to fix it, right? I want to polish it.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of in combination with essentially the mandate and tasking I was given, by the boss, by Rapier, to actually essentially execute that vision and, support his vision of having this one website, one database that's going to be able to support the Emperor's Hammer as a whole. So the scope of the office kind of expanded a little bit. So really probably the term internet office is really not the most descriptive anymore. I guess I kind of still like it from a historical, perspective, since that was my first command, position ever, like our command staff position.
Right.
Like I said, I kind of view our office as an enabler for things that are going on across the organization as a whole. So myself in particular, I'm involved in a lot of different conversations between the TIE Corps, things the TIE Corps is interested in implementing, the uniform systems, standalone applications, what the Dark Brotherhood is looking at implementing, and what the Secret Order will become. A lot of the early planning guidance that we have done kind of behind the scenes on the potential for a kind of reboot of the Hammer's Fist as the ground component. Mm-hmm. I know that's something a number of us would like to see happen at some point, and if we can figure out how to do that, that would be awesome. So, so to that extent, like the scope has broadened, and since I took over the office, we've got the communications officer that is kind of nested within the internet office, and then we brought on board the logistics officer as another portion of the internet office as well. Both of those officers are command staff officers in their own right, but they're kind of organized within the internet office. Mm-hmm. And it kind of actually works very well because we're all able to crosstalk, collaborate. All of the efforts are very mutually supportive. And then we've brought on a really spectacular staff of talented individuals as well. I wouldn't be able to do anything that I'm doing or the internet office as a whole is doing without all of the talented officers and assistants that we have within our footprint. And so that's, from some aspects, has gotten more difficult because, like I said, our scope is broader and what we're trying to accomplish is broader. Right. But I've also got really smart people and really talented people that are helping with that. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but overall, I really enjoy it.
So yeah, that's kind of where I thought it was originally going with your answer. Like it was going to get difficult over time because you're taking on more and more, but because of the people you work with, you can actually you can achieve those obstacles with ease. Well, with good effort. I don't want to say ease and then start jinxing something and then it's my fault somehow.
Yeah, and like I said, it's great having talented people where I can come up with a crazy idea and say, hey, do you have the ability to like do this? And all of a sudden I've got, fully rendered, whatever it is I asked for the next day.
Yeah.
Super cool, right? Because I very much kind of dabble in many different things, but I'm not a subject matter expert in any of them, which is nice sometimes, but also frustrating at others when I would just be like, hey, I wish I could do this, particular thing myself and not have to call on somebody else. But again, that's why we got a good team and people to support us.
Gotcha. So this next question, you kind of already answered in parts of it, so I'll ask the parts that haven't been answered. In terms of the main website, since you already pretty much explained how it works and the Dark Brotherhood portion of it, someone asked, like, who pays for the server and what tongue twister. What programming languages are used in it?
Okay.
Now I know that that's a very personal. You don't need to answer that question, but
I'm happy to do it.
Okay.
We've actually had a couple of different members. I was actually surprised when I saw some of the submitted questions and more people than I thought were interested in the kind of boring technical details. So I'll just hit that really, really quick.
Mm-hmm.
Let me speak about the tech piece first, and then I'll transition to kind of the server and money and stuff like that, kind of the business aspects.
Okay.
So tech-wise, and this actually goes back to one of the other reasons I wanted to get involved in this project. Years and years and years ago, I did websites. I did different coding for the Emperor's Hammer. I did stuff externally as well. I'm not a developer, though. Like I said, I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I touch on a few different aspects between network, server administration, coding, but I'm definitely not a developer. So this was an opportunity for me to kind of get back into coding and bringing my skill set a little bit more up to date and modernized. Nothing fancy though. It's straight PHP, for the web code, MySQL on the back end for the database. We've got several libraries we've implemented that has made life so much easier as we developed the whole thing. Very early on, Pickled Yoda, which was kind of my right-hand man on the whole website development process. He did a lot of the heavy lifting on the very kind of technical, tactical office kind of aspects of it. So Battle Sender, pilot file processing, things of that nature. But he got us turned on really early in that project, which I'm so glad he did, to an ORM for our database, our object relational model, something like that. I don't know the exact acronym.
Mm-hmm.
But we use something called Propel, which basically takes all of our database access and just turns it into object-oriented programming in PHP, which is super phenomenal. And number one, has some performance benefits with built-in caching and things of that nature. But number two is just super easy to work with. So a lot of times when we're building out website code, there's actually not a lot of need for us to dip into SQL. Mostly we're interacting with the database in the form of objects. When we're trying to do something more complex, we can drop down to SQL and do it that way as well too, and it works seamlessly. So that has made the development process so much better, as far as I see it. So that's some of the kind of technical, I guess, language aspects. We're running something called Bulma for our CSS front end, using Sass to compile our themes. Okay. Various other libraries that we're using either on the PHP side or on the JavaScript side. There's bits of JavaScript that support the site as well too, between like the the Markdown editor, Pickled Yoda in particular. Codes, maintains, whatever the proper term, the Pyrite library, which probably nobody has ever heard of, but you probably interact with it every time you use the website because It runs things such as like the drop down or the autocomplete member search selector thing.
Great help, by the way, on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So all those little extras, if you will, that made the new site a little sexier than the old one. A lot of that is from the help of his JavaScript expertise, of which I have very, very minimal. So I tend to look to him or Silwar or some of our other folks for JavaScript. So that's kind of the boring technical aspects. I think I've covered on on mostly what was asked there.
Mm-hmm.
The business aspect, so, or I guess, the how we pay for the server, and that kind of leads us into the business aspect of it, which I'll touch upon briefly. So we used to be just running off plain Jane shared generic hosting that you can get from any particular web provider on the planet. We've been with one for a whole bunch of years. It's actually one that I use for my personal stuff as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So as we developed the new site, we kind of knew how we expected it to perform on local development machines. And then we were kind of taking a look and see approach on, once we launch it to this shared environment, what's it going to do? And it was kind of okay. It was kind of doing all right there for a little while, until something very obviously changed in our shared hosting environment that we started to see very, very, very significant performance problems. And it was not related to our website code, because I had, demonstrably seen it do what it was supposed to do and do it relatively quickly. I don't know if that server got it overloaded, what was going on, but we did go into this knowing that probably moving to like a VPS was going to be the ultimate, probably need. And so when we started experiencing all those problems, that's what we ended up doing. We essentially, Rapier was good enough to finance that out of his pocket. So I don't know that everybody knows that. If at some point you're talking to Rapier, give him a good thanks for that.
Yeah, you heard it here, folks. You heard it here. Thank Rapier for this, because without
something else I've been trying to kind of get going was essentially a club operations fund, because I did see the need for a VPS coming, and that kind of leads us into some of the business aspects of running the organization. Largely over the years, Rapier, Ronan essentially is the actual owner of the Emperor's Hammer Inc. We're actually a legally incorporated entity. Just kind of footed all those bills out of their own pocket. And I knew that essentially my office was going to start driving up costs, because when you go from a cheap shared hosting environment to a VPS, that is a much more significant monthly outlay than just a little shared hosting kind of deal.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I was working on was getting kind of a club operations fund set up, which we have started. So essentially the early bits of that club fund are helping to reimburse Rapier for some of his initial outlay. But we're doing that on a completely donor basis. Okay, so technically on the website, there is a page that has information on donors, and if somebody is so interested in voluntarily donating to fund the operation of the organization, that information is out there. But it's kind of by design, really kind of well hidden. We didn't want to plaster giant, hey, go to the website and donate, to fund the club all over the front page, or plaster ads on it. We weren't going to do that.
Right.
But there is a mechanism for doing that, and if members are interested in doing that, contact me for information, and I'll get you set up with that. We are a non-profit corporation, so we are an actual incorporated legal entity, but again, we are a non-profit, so we're not using any money that comes in for anything other than club operational expenses. This is where those are going. So in fact, what you'll find on that business page is essentially a public ledger of where money is going.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be laughing, but I just briefly looked at the live chat where I see our logistics officer just chanting out merch. It's like,
And that's actually, I'm glad somebody brought that up, because that is literally something that I'm working on right now.
Oh, okay.
Kind of two options there. Number one, and probably what we end up with is going to be a hybrid of the two. Number one is a direct to consumer kind of deal, print on demand. There's of course lots of services out there. I'm evaluating 7 or 8 different services to figure out which one is going to be a good mix of quality and cost, and find the happy medium between the two of those.
Of course.
And then kind of going along with that club operations fund is the ability to potentially certain items that we would want to order and stock and sell on a limited basis, things that we couldn't do essentially print on demand, we would have some space to do that. So this is still early on. Any of this that gets into the business aspects of running the organization is not just a me call. That's essentially a board of trustees kind of discussion. And we've had those early discussions, and hence why we've kind of started facilitating some donations. But there'll be a little bit more to follow on that in the hopefully not too distant future.
So again, I'm also looking at the live chat again once more, and apparently, Ranger has tried to actually look for that page you talk about, and apparently he has failed to find it. So
maybe it'll be a scavenger hunt.
Hey, there you go, Ranger. Have fun with that scavenger hunt.
It is pretty hidden. I probably do need to put it slightly more visible, but like I said, you're never gonna feel. Our big thing is anybody that wants to be a member can expect to do so, and with no expectation of any kind of contribution on their part. If somebody is interested in doing that and feels willing to do that, that's we appreciate it and we will accept it. But again, we're not going to press for it. So that's kind of the idea behind that.
So another question then, because I do notice one of the questions that are on here. There was some that I just didn't have the time to reword into a question. I just pretty much copy and pasted straight from what they used.
Verbatim, that works.
So this one goes, maybe there's some improvements that aren't obvious as a user. Maybe talk about those a little. I'm guessing he's talking about on the website if there are some improvements that haven't been noticed by anybody yet. But I'm pretty sure you've already talked about that.
Yeah, I don't know. So I guess a lot of improvements. Number one for me on the development end, nobody's ever going to see, because a lot of the things that we've done with the back end data I did a lot of data quality work. I'll put it that way. So there's a lot of things that we've improved that technically is something you don't necessarily interact with, I guess maybe is the best explanation, but you might see it every day and it's correct. And just getting that to work properly is sometimes more complicated than it seems. That was it was a common problem on the old website. You would have people that, like, their legions of combat didn't match their combat rating, which didn't add up to their fleet commander's honor guard ranking system, which didn't mesh with something else, right? You'd have this desync of all these different pieces of data. And there was a crazy thing where we'd have to recalculate it. Anyways, we built a lot of automation into the new website. So all of that, when we're doing things right, should just work. And largely speaking,
hang on now. I've heard those words before from another game developer. Are you sure they just work?
Right. Yeah, we have to be a little careful with that, because as soon as I say this, like, the entire website is going to go up in a giant pile of blue smoke, right?
No.
We have to be very careful speaking about the website and how well it works.
Yeah. No, sorry.
So there's a lot of that back end kind of stuff that nobody really knows exists. There's something else that we do small incremental updates all the freaking time, and we don't actually. I tend not to announce any of it unless it's something like really pertinent. So we're always kind of tweaking little things, and if people are interacting with it on a daily basis, they might notice it. But kind of the best recommendation I can give is we actually maintain a public change log that's on the website, and I can, if you look on any of my reports or my recent report, the change log is linked on there. I believe it's linked somewhere on the bottom of the website. If not, I'll make sure that it materializes on there later on. But the change log is really nice because you can go through there and you can see, oh wow, they've just one improvement probably very little people have seen yet. It's very new. If you go to the competitions page, the old competition center, you go down to the very bottom, there's now a competition search on there. And you can search competitions by the submitter or whether the status is, pending or approved.
Oh yeah.
If you knew what it might have been called, you can plug that in there.
I do remember you had actually brought that up in in another chat, and I did see it and immediately fell in love with it.
Yeah, so it's stuff like that. We try to find those, usability enhancements where it's like, oh man, I have to I have to do something on the website super often as a user. Man, it would be so much easier if I could just search for the thing that I was looking for in this example, instead of having to figure out what category it was in and go into the category and Control F and then try to scroll through and find it that way. So it's just those usability enhancements where if people are finding that they've got a task they're needing to do and it seems overly complex, can we put it front and center? Can we put in a search? Can we present the information on a screen? I try to do that stuff on a regular basis to where people are able to reap those benefits immediately. So lots of small incremental updates, iterative updates.
Okay. So another one, and it's actually kind of works the same way, about there were any requests / ideas that never got implemented. Would there be any talk about them now, or they're just gonna stay not implemented, I guess?
Good question. Let me figure out the best way to address this. So let me speak more broadly first.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I really wanted to, the environment I wanted to foster as a command staff member is I wanted to be available and approachable for the membership. And so that's something I try to be pretty good about, people, pinging me on Discord and trying to get them a response. Why is this thing the way it is? Oh, I have a recommendation. Oh, I just want to give you some feedback, whatever the case may be. I do my best to follow up on all of those. Don't always get it perfect, but I do my best there. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we implemented when we launched the new website was a public GitHub repo where people could go in there and drop issues, bug reports, suggestions, improvements, things of that nature. That way it gets tracked in a very specific way. Again, sometimes I see stuff, somebody might have an idea on Discord, and I might even look at it at the time. But when it actually comes down to sit down and develop things, I'm not necessarily going to remember everything, everybody's good idea every time. Mm-hmm. And so we set up that repo, and that's where we really like to get any kind of suggestions, improvements, bugs, things of that nature, report it there. Happy to chat about any of those with people on Discord as well. But if it's something you really want to see happen for sure, throw it up in that repo. And what that lets us do, again, we're going to track it all the way through there. We can put comments in there. And then for anything that we decide, oh yeah, absolutely, this is a good idea, we can roll that directly into whatever repository, private repository where we have the code and the other resources. And then it gets triaged appropriately and either, basically if we roll it into one of those repositories, it's probably going to happen at some point is the bottom line. So essentially we've triaged it by moving it. We're saying, yep, this makes sense. We should get to this when we can get to it in accordance with all of the other existing priorities. And that goes not only for the website, but that's like the Tycore tailoring tool, which Sky Shadow leads the coding effort on that side. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter what project your issue's for, submit it there, we'll route it appropriately, and then it can get addressed.
I was about to say I'm sorry, real quick. I was to say that was another thing I had mentioned this earlier in the episode about the tailoring tool. It just got an update not that long ago, correct?
It did. So we did the 3.0.2 release, mm-hmm. Which notably added support for a few things visually that are new. The Operational Readiness Award is in there. The new stripes, position stripes for squadron executive officers, now that that's a recognized, full-time primary position, those are in there as well. And then if you look in the change log for it, a bunch of other bug fixes, updates, things of that nature were in there.
Right.
And then unfortunately we had to do a 3.0.3 release shortly thereafter when we realized there was almost literally a one-character issue with the way it was parsing some information returned by the API for a medal or two. And unfortunately that took a recompile and re-release, so that's kind of aggravating. You like to avoid that if possible, but at the end of the day, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sucks, but if it has to be done, it has to be done.
Yeah, and we try to keep everything working the way it should for everybody. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good example of people reporting the issue. Somebody reported that, we threw it in the repo, it was processed over to the appropriate location it needed to be. We said, oh, yep, here's this problem. We identified what it is, and we got the fix out the door. And so the other thing, kind of going back to the, what is implemented, what is not, we try to be, and I try to be very deliberate about giving people feedback on their suggestions and recommendations, and say, yep, this sounds good, and we're going to look at doing it at some point. Sometimes we might have already evaluated something. Maybe it's something we've already considered. Maybe I take it to relevant command staff officers, if it's something that is not, basically directly in my authority, if you will, and say, hey, combat operations officer, is this something you do or do not want to do? And then depending on their results, we might say, hey, from a coding perspective, the office that owns that process or procedure says, nah, they don't want to do it that way. So generally speaking, if we're rejecting suggestions, there's a reason behind it other than, nah, that's stupid.
Right, yeah. Because
so,
I'm
like I
sure
said,
a lot of people thought that.
Yeah, I think I feel like we're pretty receptive to comments and feedback. Certainly if somebody feels like we're not, let me know, and I'd love to rectify that. As a succinct example, female uniforms is a really good example of that. That's a comment we see.
I was just going to ask about that.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So I guess when if period question mark are the female officer uniforms going to be on the TTT, or should we be asking Sky Shadow?
No, it's perfect. It's a perfect question, and I'm absolutely enthusiastic to give it like an official response from the office, if that makes sense. Okay. So we like the idea, and we definitely would like to see it happen. Let me tell you the technical reasons why it's difficult. Essentially, what that requires, once we change the geometry of the uniform, the base uniform, right, the model, if you will,
right,
essentially the code, let me back up. There's two ways things are positioned on that uniform. One is because the model that is being added to it, let's say a blaster, for example, has been statically put in that location in the actual 3D mesh geometry files.
Right, because the object is just technically floating there. It's not actually attached to anything.
Right. So some of those objects are just put there statically, and that's because they always go in the same place. The collar insignia, for example, always goes in the same place. So it's just placed there, right? Some other things, the most prime example of that being medals, awards, ribbons, are just kind of literally floating in space in nowhere near the uniform model, and then the actual tailoring tool code dynamically positions those and puts them, rotates them, and arranges them the way that they need to be, okay?
Right.
So that's two different ways stuff gets on the uniform. For probably reasons that are becoming obvious, when you change the base model, you change all of that. So
yeah, you're gonna see some clipping issues, things going right through the uniform, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And so, unfortunately, I wish it was as simple as like change the uniform, everything sticks to it, and you're good to go.
Not so much.
It's really complicated. And when I say that if you took a copy of TTT and forked it and basically made a new TTT that was just the female uniform, that is actually easier than it's going to be for us to integrate the female uniform into the current one.
Okay.
So I say all of that to say it's complicated, but we like the idea and we have started on it. But it's probably, unfortunately, just not going to be quick.
With all good things, it needs time to be, worked on and nurtured.
Exactly, and we want to do it right is the other way. We don't want to kind of put it out,
half-assed.
Just half-assed, quite frankly.
Yeah.
The other thing is, there were some female uniform efforts over the years on the old 2D uniform systems, and I'll just say it was very obvious they were developed by a guy.
Oh, God.
if we're gonna have a female uniform, I want it to be done the proper way too. So we don't need some crazy cartoon looking thing. We want an actual quality, finished product at the end. So
Right.
that's also really important that we get that right.
Right. So I'm sorry. It that kind of threw me off. That it's like, yeah, it's like I think without actually seeing any examples, I kind of can already figure what those early versions look like.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So we would like to avoid that.
Yeah. All right. I think that's pretty much all the list of questions that I got from the pilots that haven't been answered. So if you had any at this point, you're more than free to ask while I make sure I go through all of them.
Yeah. I don't know if I have any questions or other stuff to bring up. Like I said, one of my big philosophies when I took over as the internet officer was hopefully being approachable, and again, I see our office as being there to enable whatever operations are going on across the club. So if there's something that you might be working on that you think our team can help with, we stand ready to do that. Whether that be various projects, web-based, application-based. Like I said, we've got a lot of coders. The other thing that's kind of come up in a couple of recent conversations I've had with people as well too, is individuals that might want to get involved in helping with some of that as well. So
that actually kind of led to the question I just thought up of in terms of assistance.
Mm-hmm.
I know you have, I don't know if it's many or one IO assistant.
We've got a small handful.
Yeah, as I say, I don't have the list on me right now of who's on there, so apologies for those that are actually IOAs, and I can't make mention of names because I just don't have the list on me right now. But are you still looking for more IOAs, or at this point just wanting to work with people with your current team right now, if of any new projects out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of multi-part answer for that. Number one, always looking for individuals that are interested in working on various projects that have talents that are in the kind of realm of projects that we work on, right? So obviously we're doing a lot of things right now with graphics, with 3D modeling, obviously various forms of web coding, PHP, SQL. We're looking at efforts right now and how we're going to implement the Discord bot. So there's actually some decisions for us to make there on language. Logically speaking, that probably goes between Python, which we're probably leaning toward for a couple of different reasons, or JavaScript. So, any of that other stuff that people are familiar with and say, oh, I'm interested in working on projects to benefit the greater membership, I would be interested in talking to those people. To the question of IOAs, we kind of bring IOAs on a case-by-case basis, just depending on the level of involvement. So, it's primarily folks on IOA assignments that are working on a lot of stuff for us across multiple projects or multiple lines of effort. And so that's generally where I say, yeah, we probably need to recognize you, with a position, for example. But that's not a prerequisite. Probably my best example right now is Robert Hogan. He's definitely engaged very heavily right now with a lot of efforts we're working on 3D rendering and medals and some ideas on awards. He's not officially an IOA, but he kind of at this point might as well be. Because
he's also, I believe, the TO attaché.
He is.
Yeah. Yep. I'll eventually get to him at some point because I said this season with some other interviewees I want to try to get this season to have all the admirals in the of like attachés and above on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's doing great things over with Silas over the training office as well too. It's definitely good to see that office is robustly manned and able to work through a lot of those issues. And there's a lot of collaboration going on between me and Silas as well too. There's a lot of ideas that I had come up with, or independently, myself, Silas, Robert Hogan, some others came up with a few different concepts. So the command offices are also working really well together. crosstalk collaboration, because certainly as the TO has cool ideas on things they want to implement, I want to figure out how we can code it for them and make that a reality. So.
And I looked at the live chat one more time to see was it as bad as the Ewoks? I'm assuming the uniforms, as that just brought up to my head. It's like, have we ever tried at some point having different species uniforms? Species in like the Star Wars universe, obviously.
Somebody, where was it posted the other day? Miles had his artwork posted. I don't remember which one I saw. Anyways, it was
most
a
likely
Miles,
probably from Connie or one of the ones he made
it was a
himself.
Miles artwork, and really my biggest concern was, and if he's on the chat, I really hope he is. My biggest concern was, does he have to get a tail hole tailored into his uniform?
I mean,
these are significant concerns of mine.
yeah, I mean, if he's, I know he was one of the moderators right now watching along with one of my pilots, Ryuzakin, who's in chat. I don't know if he's actually there or awake, which is fine, because I know Ryu is. But we can ask him that question in the Discord channel, I'm sure.
That's a solid, hard-hitting question, right? That's the one you should have hit him with on his podcast interview. I actually haven't had a chance to listen to that one yet, so I'll have to circle back to
I'm
that.
pretty sure, I uploaded that one. The current, right now, the only ones other than obviously this one, I think is just the solo one that I ran last time. I was about to say last week. It was only a couple of days ago.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, as I say, it would be interesting answer to find out. Hey, does he actually need a tail hole there, or does it just go above the belt line? Like,
it have to be something, right?
Yeah, but like, would that be obviously not now because you've already got a big task at hand with the female variant of the uniform. Would that be a possibility in the far future, or no?
Good question.
Yeah.
I have no idea, frankly, because that's almost one of those, like, you'd have to look at. I think Miles has appeared.
I just saw chat. Yeah, it seems Miles has appeared. Do we get the famous answer of, is there a tail hole in his uniform or not?
It's like I said.
There is. There is.
There is.
There we go. Biggest mystery answered. Ending the stream. No, I'm kidding.
An hour and a half we've been talking internet off things, but I really think the biggest revelation has just occurred. So I'm quite excited about that.
Exactly. Holes, multiple, apparently hijackers saying, wait, I don't want to. Oh, right, because tails. Yeah. I'm sorry. I don't know if the microphone audibly picked up on that facepalm, but it was there.
That'd be good if it did. I'm not sure if it did or not.
Yeah. Anyway. But yeah, I think that's all that we got covered, as much as we could from all the questions that we received. So I can't. I was gonna say, I'll ask you, like, who would you want to see? I'm gonna say on the episode. I can't say next on the episode because my scheduling of that has just been completely borked. But I will say, if you want to make a recommendation on who you like to see on the show in the future, I got a couple already after today. But is there anyone you would think of?
Yeah, I'm trying to think on who we've worked through in terms of command officers.
So,
or I guess more accurately, who we're missing, or attachés. So we've got we already mentioned Robert Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
We need the boss on here at some point. You're gonna have to get Rapier on here at some point.
Ooh. Oh boy, that was the one I was waiting for. So there we go. We finally got the recommendation. I'm gonna
get the big man on here.
Hey, I mean, if I could get him on here, that I think will have to be the most advertised one possible.
I'll get him on here. I will facilitate that, no problem. I will be on DM with him in about 30 seconds, and you You give me the time and place, and I'll tell the Grand Admiral to appear.
Alrighty. I will let you know. I'll get to that when I finally unbork my interview schedule on this already, because I still gotta get Ranger on here like I said I was going to last week, and then I got one more after him, which eluded his interview from last season. General Stryker, I know you're listening somewhere. You're going to get on this show. You will not evade me this time.
He will be command directed to appear on the podcast at date time XYZ.
There you go. Yes. But that's pretty much all I got for right now. Thank you so much, Turtle. This has been very illuminating. Learned a lot more than what I was expecting about the internet office.
Yeah, it's glad to hear. And, the last thing I want to kind of close out with is I just want to kind of thank the membership as well, because, command offices, are there and cool and stuff like that. But, we're here to support what the membership is doing. And if, the members were not engaging on Discord, we're not flying missions, we're not involved in competitions, if the members didn't care about the Emperor's Hammer, then there's no point for what any of the Admiralty is doing or command staff members. So, we've got a bunch of kind of older generation members like myself. We've got a lot of newer generation members as well. And that's, super cool to see for me, especially as an older guy, that the, tradition of carrying this organization forward is alive and well.
Alrighty. Well, thank you again so much. And I'm going to go ahead and definitely mute myself again and finish up this episode, all right?
Sounds good. You have a good one.
All right, you as well. Thank you for stopping by. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be it for tonight. And yes, you heard Turtle. We finally got the recommendation, so now we just got to get the scheduling. Get the boss man himself, the Grand Admiral of the entire EH. This is going to be fun and not entirely nerve-wracking on my part at all. Ha 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 ha. Oh, shit. All right. Well, that's going to be it for me, folks. Thank you all so much for stopping on by, and hope to see you on the next episode when I will eventually, I swear to God, I'm going to get Ranger on this show. Y'all have a great night. Take care. Bye-bye.